Okay, what's up? It's me again. Okay, I wanted to do a video to describe how to hook up multiple batteries to a vehicle. Okay, if we're going to hook up multiple batteries, we need to ask ourselves a couple of questions. Number one, why we need this extra battery? How do we listen to our system? Where we're going to mount the battery? And what type of battery we're going to use. So let's go ahead and get started, and we'll look at a few scenarios. Okay, so let's draw the outline of our car here. So this, up here is going to be the front of the car, and then back here will be the cabin of the car. So up in the front here is the hood area. We're going to have our battery in there, the starter battery. Okay, they're going to have a plus and a minus pole on it. Okay, so now we got to ask ourselves, what do we need another battery for, and how do we listen to our system? That's the main question. So are we going to listen to our system with the car running, or are we going to listen to our system without the car running? That's the main question, because that helps us determine whether we need a deep cycle battery or a starter battery. Because if you're going to listen to the system with the car running always, the battery that you put over here can be another starter battery, because they're always going to be being charged by the alternator, and you don't have to worry about dropping down to 10.5 volts. If you look at my other video about battery types, you'll see why 10.5 volts is important. So that's one question, whether we need a starter battery or a deep cycle battery. The next question we have to say, where we're going to mount it. If we can't find sufficient room up under the hood to mount it, or we have to mount it laying on its side or upside down or something like that, we're going to need a seal battery and not a non-seal battery. And if we're going to mount it in the car with us, somewhere in the cabin or in the trunk with us, we must use a seal battery, because regular batteries vent when they are being charged, and they vent hydrogen gas and oxygen gas, and those are both very flammable. Not to mention they have sulfuric acid and lead in them, and you don't want that in the car with you if it's not a seal battery. So let's look at the easiest case first. Let's say we're always going to have our car running when we're listening to the system, and we're going to mount it under the hood. So in this case, we don't really care whether it's a seal battery or not, and we don't really care whether it's a deep cycle battery or not, because the car is always going to be running, so we're not worried about reserve capacity. So we're going to have two batteries up here in the front. This is the easiest case, because we're always going to have the car running when we're listening to the system. So the alternator will always be charging the batteries. That's important, because 10.5 volts is important. So in this case, what we're going to do, we're going to take a cable and we're going to hook the negative pole of this battery over to the negative pole of that battery. This is the ideal case. Okay, I'm just going to mark it like this. That's going to the negative. Some folks will tell you that no, you don't have to do that. You can actually run this cable over to the frame of the car. You can. That's not the ideal case though. The best case scenario is to hook a cable between the two poles of the battery. And this needs to be a significant cable, no smaller than 4 gauge when you're hooking two batteries together, because you will have significant current running between those. So that's the negative pole. Hook those two together. If you've done the big 3 in your car and you've run bigger cables over to the frame, yeah, you can hook this over to the frame. That's not ideal, but you can do that. So negative to negative. Now what do you do on the positive side? Okay, you're going to use the same gauge of cable that you use for this, and you're going to come out of the positive side and immediately go into a fuse. And this fuse is probably going to be somewhere between 150 amp, 200 amp. Alright, and what you're going to do is you're going to run a cable over to the other side, and you're going to go into a fuse right here. And then you're going to go to the positive pole of the battery. So the thing to take away, positive goes to positive, negative goes to negative. This is the easiest scenario. Now there are going to be people who argue and tell you, oh no, you only need one fuse between these two batteries. That is not true. I'm going to show you why right here. Okay, so let's say that somebody told you that you don't need two fuses between these two sources. You can just use one fuse. So let's say you took this fuse out. Fuses are for protection. They keep excessive current from flowing through the system. Okay, you took that fuse out. Let's say that the wire between these two was chafed here, or something cut into the wire, or it got mashed or something like that. Anyway, the metal is exposed at that point right there. What happens is, since current takes the path of least resistance, this becomes a short circuit to ground, and every bit of current in this battery is going to rush out of here and go to this point. I mean, if you touch that with a battery, it'll probably weld itself to that point. That's how much current flows through there. But what happens is this fuse will see all of that current trying to flow, and it'll blow. So this fuse has blown. So this is now out of the circuit. So you don't have to worry about a short circuit anymore. But you've added another battery into this circuit. So this battery right here has free access to this point, and it's going to send every drop of current it has to that point right there. This wire is going to get red hot. I mean, it'll glow. It'll get so hot. It'll melt. It'll get so hot. And when this battery expends all of its energy like that, it's liable to explode and throw sulfuric acid all over the hood compartment of your car. So I said all that to say this: don't let anybody convince you that you don't need two fuses here. You do. Okay, so you need a fuse there, and you'll need a fuse here. And these will be somewhere between 150 to 200 amp fuses. It depends on how much amperage you have being pulled at the by your amp. The more current you have your amp pulling, the bigger cable you're going to need, and the greater the fuse you're going to need here. But for the most part, you're going to need somewhere between 150 and 300 amps between these batteries. Okay, and so this is the simplest scenario, and since the video is getting kind of long, I'll do another video for the more complicated scenario where you want to be able to play your system without the car running, and you want to mount the battery inside the car with you. That's probably the most complex case, so I'll do that one next.